The theory of evolution explains how all species on Earth today descended from simple life forms that first appeared over 3 billion years ago. We'll cover Darwin's revolutionary insights into natural selection, the process of speciation, evidence supporting evolutionary theory, and finally, extinction factors. Let's start with Darwin's groundbreaking observations and conclusions. Charles Darwin developed his theory based on careful observations made during his 5-year voyage aboard HMS Beagle. Darwin recognized two crucial facts about living organisms that became foundational to his theory. First, individuals within any species show lots of variation in their characteristics, from size and color to behavior and physiology. Second, organisms constantly compete for limited resources in their environment. From these observations, Darwin reasoned that individuals with characteristics better suited to their environment would succeed more in this competition. These better adapted organisms would survive longer, find more food, avoid predators more effectively, and ultimately produce more offspring. This principle became known as survival of the fittest, though fittest means best adapted to the environment, not necessarily strongest. The organisms with advantageous traits would pass these beneficial characteristics to their offspring through inheritance. Conversely, organisms with less favorable characteristics would struggle to survive and reproduce. Their genes would gradually become less common in the population, potentially disappearing entirely. Over many generations, beneficial characteristics become increasingly prevalent whilst disadvantageous ones diminish. This gradual change in populations over time is evolution, driven by the mechanism of natural selection. Evolution explains both the unity and diversity of life on Earth. All species share common ancestors if we trace back far enough, explaining fundamental similarities like cellular structure and DNA. The differences arise because populations have adapted to vastly different environments over millions of years. Darwin's ideas have been refined with modern scientific discoveries, particularly in genetics. We now understand that genes control inheritance, and variation arises from mutations, random changes in DNA sequences. When beneficial mutations occur, natural selection favors these variants, potentially spreading them throughout the population. This genetic understanding, unavailable to Darwin, has strongly validated his fundamental insights about evolution's mechanisms. Over extended periods, accumulated changes can become so significant that populations can no longer interbreed successfully. This process, called speciation, creates entirely new species from existing ones. For speciation to occur, it typically requires reproductive isolation between populations. Reproductive isolation often occurs when populations become geographically separated by barriers like mountain ranges, rivers, or ocean expanses. These separated populations face different environmental pressures and food sources, driving divergent evolutionary paths. As isolated populations adapt to their specific environments, they accumulate different genetic changes. Eventually, they become so genetically distinct that they cannot produce fertile offspring together, even if reunited. Once reproductive isolation is complete, the populations represent separate species following independent evolutionary trajectories. This process has generated Earth's millions of species from common ancestors over billions of years. Multiple lines of evidence support evolution by natural selection, though Darwin initially faced skepticism. When On the Origin of Species was published in 1859, the supporting evidence was less comprehensive than today. The fossil record provides compelling evidence for evolution. Fossils preserve remains of ancient organisms in rock layers, with older fossils in deeper layers. This record shows countless extinct species, demonstrating that Earth's inhabitants have changed dramatically over time. Fossils reveal gradual transitions between ancient and modern forms. The evolution of horses, for example, can be traced from small, multi-toed ancestors to modern single-hoofed species through numerous intermediate fossils. Comparing anatomy, which means structure, gives us another line of evidence through homologous or similar structures. The front limbs of humans, cats, whales, and bats contain the same basic bone arrangements despite serving different functions. These structural similarities suggest descent from a common ancestor. Vestigial structures provide further anatomical evidence for evolution. The human appendix, wisdom teeth, and tailbone serve little or no function but make sense as remnants from ancestors who used them. Some snakes retain tiny, internal leg bones despite having no legs. These vestigial structures would be inexplicable without evolution but perfectly logical as inheritance from legged ancestors. Modern molecular biology has provided powerful new evidence through DNA and protein comparisons. Species sharing recent common ancestors have more genetic similarities than those whose lineages deviated earlier. Humans and chimpanzees share approximately 98% of their DNA, reflecting our recent evolutionary divergence. In contrast, humans share less genetic similarity with more distantly related species. We can observe evolution occurring in real time with rapidly reproducing organisms. Bacterial evolution of antibiotic resistance demonstrates natural selection within human timescales. When exposed to antibiotics, susceptible bacteria die, whilst resistant variants survive and multiply, creating resistant populations. Darwin's theory initially faced opposition for several reasons beyond scientific skepticism. It contradicted prevailing religious beliefs about divine creation, offering a naturalistic explanation for life's diversity. Darwin couldn't fully explain how traits were inherited or how new variations arose. The science of genetics, which would later support his theory, remained undiscovered for decades after his publication. Limited fossil evidence at the time made Darwin's claims difficult to verify conclusively. Alternative evolutionary theories competed with Darwin's natural selection. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck proposed that organisms could pass acquired characteristics to offspring, suggesting that traits developed during life would be inherited. Lamarck's theory predicted that a giraffe stretching to reach high leaves would develop a longer neck, passing this trait to offspring. Similarly, a blacksmith's children would inherit his muscular arms developed through work. However, experiments consistently disproved Lamarckian inheritance. We now know that acquired physical changes don't alter genetic information. If you lose a finger in an accident, your children aren't born with missing fingers. The discovery of genetics validated Darwin's theory by explaining inheritance mechanisms. Mendel's work on heredity, though initially overlooked, eventually merged with evolutionary theory to form modern evolutionary synthesis. Additional fossil discoveries have revealed many transitional forms between major groups. Archaeopteryx, discovered shortly after Darwin published his theory, showed features of both reptiles and birds. Tiktaalik, found in 2004, demonstrates the transition from fish to tetrapods with both fins and primitive limb bones. Extinction represents evolution's other phase, the disappearance of species unable to adapt sufficiently. The fossil record reveals that over 99% of all species that ever lived are now extinct. Species become extinct when environmental changes exceed their ability to adapt. For example, climate shifts, habitat destruction, or new predators can eliminate populations before beneficial mutations arise and spread. New diseases can devastate species lacking immunity. Competition from better adapted species can drive others to extinction through resource depletion. Invasive species often outcompete native organisms, leading to local or global extinctions. Catastrophic events cause mass extinctions, eliminating numerous species simultaneously. The asteroid impact 66 million years ago killed the dinosaurs along with approximately 75% of all species. Earth has experienced five major mass extinctions, each followed by evolutionary radiations as survivors diversified. These events have profoundly shaped life's history, creating opportunities for new groups to dominate. Human activities are currently driving what scientists call the sixth mass extinction. Habitat destruction, pollution, overharvesting, and climate change are eliminating species faster than natural background rates. Current extinction rates exceed normal levels by 100 to 1,000 times. Understanding evolution helps us appreciate life's interconnectedness and predict species' responses to environmental changes. This knowledge proves crucial for conservation efforts and managing human impacts on biodiversity. Evolution by natural selection, supported by evidence from anatomy, molecular biology, and direct observation, stands as one of science's most robust theories. It explains life's diversity whilst revealing the common threads connecting all organisms. Next time, we'll explore how humans apply evolutionary principles through selective breeding of plants and animals.